Tell me this, you said if we remove all the garbage in the fairy tales, if men are true to their biology, no man is a one-woman man.
I truly actually believe that. I believe I think that obviously, okay, we're humans, right? We exist as biological animals, and then we exist with the degree of societal programming. And I think the femme-centric societies of the West have convinced men that we should have one woman and one woman only. And I can get conspiracy theorists on why that is, but I think a lot of it is down to the fact that they are trying very hard in the Western world to suppress the will of man. They want the Western male to a degree to be suppressed, and not suppressed in a way which empowers him. Because I think there's different degrees of suppression, right? You can be suppressed in a way which will empower you, but you can also be suppressed in a way which will just destroy your will to fight. And I think a lot of that is down to, not down to this, but every single thing they do, every single thing society purports to a degree is not to empower men. And you're more likely to feel powerful as a man if you have 3 wives, or if you have a lot of female who adore you, right? But if you have one chick who doesn't obey you, who you can't divorce without losing the house, who won't even have sex with you and doesn't want to have your kids, and you're stuck with her, it's pretty hard to find warrior spirit. It's hard to act like a king if you don't feel like a king in your own household. And I think that if you were to go to any man in the world and be honest with him and say, look, it's perfectly acceptable for you to have this woman. She's going to be loyal to you. She's going to love you. She's going to stay with you. She's your wife. And you can also have this one, and she's going to be your wife. Same deal. I do not think there's a man alive who would say no to that. I really don't. Why would he? Why would he? Right? I think society tells us we're supposed to only have one. But I understand in Islam you can have 4. I think. But I'm not an expert. You are. But I just think it's natural human nature to enjoy the company of more than one female. Or I think if you're a man of means, you could easily have more than one wife. I think that's perfectly normal, and I think that's been beaten out of the Western male as a suppression mechanism.
Inshallah, God willing, when you do take your shahada, which is simply a testimony that there's, again, that's like in the adhan, when you were listening to it and you were in your car, that simple statement that there's nothing worthy of worship except Allah and Muhammad is his messenger. So inshallah, when you take your shahada, do you see yourself being someone that would need 4 wives? Because somebody in your state, is that something where now this, if you want to be someone who's devoted to God 100%, and now if it's in marriage, and now God is giving you an avenue, is this also another proof? Because if I have Christians come to me and say, you know what, Eddie, scratching their head. I had one professor of jiu-jitsu. I teach Brazilian jiu-jitsu, great jiu-jitsu. And a friend of mine, we're on the mats together, and out of nowhere, he comes to me and says, Eddie, you know what? I've been thinking about this. He goes, it makes sense that man can have more than one wife. There's more women, and this, that, and the other. He's using his logic, and he just out of nowhere came up with this.
But you know what else more than one wife will give you? It'll give you children faster. Because even the most atheistic or the most Christian men I know, they might have 2 or 3 babies, and it'll take 5 to 6 years by the time the woman gets pregnant, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And they said, I'd love to have more kids, but my wife's finished now, et cetera. Look, if you're a man of means financially, let's say me, for example, I'm financially very well off. I'd love to have 10 children. I can't get that from one woman. Maybe I could, right? But you understand the point, right? So there's also a bunch of other benefits to having 4 wives. Just have a nice, big, large family. I mean, why be a man? This is why you're on the planet, right? You're on the planet to spread your genes and spread your ideas and to conquer the best you can. It's inside of every single male. We all have that natural instinct inside of us, the masculine instinct for conquest. That's why we went to war like we did since the dawn of human time, right? You want to be old on your rocking chair and look down at all your children who obey you. And you want to be proud with what you've done. And yeah, having a bunch of wives makes a whole bunch of sense. It makes a bunch of sense. Like, I don't see why it wouldn't. Now, obviously, the Western female will say, that's disgusting. But the Western female will sleep with a guy she met for 10 minutes, and she thinks that's not disgusting. So her entire worldview is absolutely distorted. I don't think there's anything wrong with many women sharing a man who has the means to take care of them and provide for them. I think that's completely natural.
Many people, they twist this and they think this is like some harem of a Muslim with all these women and whatnot. They get this Hollywood image or whatnot. But, this is a woman's actual right, a woman to choose the best man out there to go ahead, when there's also, you look in today's society where, like you're saying, it's hard to also have a a strong family. This is a responsibility. This is not just something where you're just playing with them. You're taking her on, you're caring for her, and not every man can do this. It takes a man to do this. And many, you talk about this also, the difference between, and fill us in, what's a beta male, alpha male, and women, the hypergamy, women looking for the best men out there. And a lot of them, you also talk about men have turned into cowards. You know what I mean? So it's a role that is hard to fulfill. But for someone like you, who now, and somebody, let's say, who is used to, let's say, a famous person, a celebrity, a man of status, and you also give this example, like through history, the sultans, the leaders, the conqueror, whoever, the highest men of society, this was something that they all had multiple wives. They had multiple women. So now to limit a man in this stature, in this status, to just one, but now you have an avenue that God has allowed. What do you say?
But this is the exact point, right? This is why a lot of the degeneracy that exists amongst Western world leadership exists. Like if you look at rich men in the West, right? A rich man in the West, especially a political, someone who works in politics, they're only allowed by society and by Christian law to have one woman. And they have this one woman and they're not satisfied with her. So what do they end up doing? They end up looking for secrets. They want to do things that nobody's going to know about. So what do they do in secret? Well, we can go down the rabbit hole of Epstein's Island and XYZ and all the crazy, degenerate, disgusting things they do just to pretend and promote this one woman image. But truthfully, no man is satisfied with that. And because they're not satisfied, they're out there doing whatever they can in secret. And basically a lot of it's absolutely degenerate. Whereas if you look at the leader of UAE, he has 7, 8 wives, but that means he doesn't need to go down any kind of degenerate avenue because he's satisfied as an individual and he's satisfied with his status. Look, as a man, especially if you're a high status male, you want to be satisfied with that status, right? I have worked very, very hard to become a high status male. So I want to drive a car that reflects that. I want to have a relationship or relationships that reflect that. Nobody wants to become the richest man in the world to sit around with one chick who doesn't obey them. Nobody's interested in that. And that's why they go down the path of degeneracy. That's why I think the Western world is so degenerate, because they're not allowed to live out their natural male instinct. They're not allowed to live out their masculine instinct. Even if you look at, let's say, a country which is still Christian, but is not bound by the same societal rules. If you look at, let's say, Russia, right? Every rich man in Russia, every oligarch, he has a wife, but he has 5 19-year-old girlfriends, and society's fine. So there's no Epstein's Island. There's no, Hunter Biden's laptop and cracked out prostitutes and all this insanity. And all that's just basically comes down to the fact that they've told rich, powerful men they're allowed one woman only. And they end up just going down a path of secrecy and degeneracy to try and feel satisfied. And that's another thing that Islam fixes, because you can be a man of stature, a rich, powerful man, have 4 wives that reflect that. And I think 4 wives are probably about enough for any guy. So you'll be okay. You're not going to start running around the world doing insane things.
That's the limit there. 4 wives. So tell me then, just since you mentioned Ukraine, that's another example. If all the men go out, because you have this whole movement with the feminism, and now the men are the ones who are stepping up, going out and getting killed in the war. And now let's say you have an abundance of women. This solves the problem? No.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah. And the whole feminism argument is amazing how quickly that disappears when war starts, right? So that's out the window. But yeah, it does fix the problem. And also, it's kind of sad. Like, I live in Romania, which is next door to Ukraine. And since the war started, I'm getting a lot of messages from girls who live in Ukraine trying to come live with me in Romania, effectively, kind of run away to a degree. And it's kind of sad. Like, imagine being a man in a trench in the freezing cold to defend a country. And then the most beautiful women of your country are just trying to use Instagram to bounce to some millionaire's house. Like, I don't know, man. The whole dynamic is kind of scary to me. I really, and that's another thing. Like, when we go back a point, not to over iterate, but to go back to what we were talking about earlier about how you cannot disrespect the Islamic faith. I understand and respect the people, even all the wars that happen in the world. It makes so much more sense to me to fight for an idea or a religion or a faith than it ever would be to fight for a country, for example.